In this video I'm going to try and explain some of the problems associated with doing a left-right split screen take. So let's start off with using the timeline. There we go. First problem we can see is we're getting some pulsing. We can see this better if I enlarge the picture. If we look where the center line is between the left and right portions of the screen, and if I move the cursor backwards and forwards, we're going to see that there's a pulse between the left and the right side of the camera. Now this is being caused by autofocus of the device. You really want to switch this off and just use a constant, not constant focus, but a single focus, so that it's not trying to adjust its focus for anything coming into frame. You can see it's really gets annoying backwards and forwards. The other thing that will happen is you want to lock off the exposure as well, because as you notice, if I come into the frame, that this side has now become darker than that side, because mainly because of my white shirt. It's trying to bring the exposure down to stop anything from overexposing here. So it's reducing the amount of exposure time for each frame, and possibly altering the white balance as well. So if you can lock both of those off, white balance and the exposure, that'll stop this from going from one side to the other lighter or darker, and it might also, with locking off the focus, stop the pulsing that you get between the two frames. So you notice that settles down, and I'm being very careful not to put any part of my body over where I think the centre of the bench is. So that's my marker for me to try and keep on my side of the frame. You can see I actually get my elbow quite close to the centre here, and you can see the exposure difference on the flower pot and on the bench as well, possibly even in the grass. So that's me, and I'm settling down, and then I start to come into the other side of the frame, and again, because of I've got everything on auto now, the dark side is the right hand side, and that's getting darker than the left hand side, because again it's automatically compensating for the exposure. And again, I'm trying to make sure that my elbow and everything, it looks casual, but I'm very aware of where the center of the screen is, or will be when I actually post-product. So I'm trying to keep my side as much as possible. So that's it, and again, watch my elbow, it gets quite close to that center point, and it looks like I'm not really paying attention, but believe me, I am, and so on and so forth. So we go through me trying to pretend that there's, just me on one side or me on the other, not taking any notice of the other one of the other me, and it goes across. I do a bit of chimping, put everything back, and all the time you can see, because I haven't locked off those exposure values or the focus, that everything is changing from the left to the right hand side of the screen. It makes this changeover point, this split point, very visible. Ruins the actual illusion of me doing that. And again, as I get up, it's altering the exposure, it's getting lighter on this side of the frame than that side of the frame, and then I disappear from the frame. Now at this point, as I disappear, you'll notice, if you pay very careful attention, that this split point starts to move across with me leaving the frame. You can see got to about here now, and I did this because towards the end I lost concentration, and my elbow is going to go past the split point, and I don't want my elbow getting cut off. So it's now moved all the way over there, so that when I do eventually get up, here goes, you see my elbow there, split point was here. All of that would have disappeared from frame had I not moved the split point across. And I go again. You can see here, because of the exposure differences, again it's sort of ruining the effect that it was one shot and that there were actually two of me there at the time. So that was all ruined, which could have been prevented by just locking the camera settings off. So that's the first thing, always get it right in camera, and you'll find that the editing process afterwards gets a lot easier, even if you make a mistake with your positioning and you need to move the frame across. So we'll put that back and we'll have a look at this effect that I used, which was New Blue Elements split screen effect. And if I bring it back towards the beginning, you can see I've got it vertical 180 degrees. It's in the center of the frame because I knew that's where I was going to aim the camera. And again, we've got all these exposure problems as we run through it, but let's get to where I want to alter where the split is in the center. But let's get to where I want to alter where the split position is in the frame. So if we look over here in the key editor, you can see I've made two positions. Now there's the first one. As I leave the frame, it's still in the center, but then as I leave the frame and I've left the frame, I now select a second point where I want to alter the position of the screen, and you see I've typed in 40, which has moved that split point right the way across over here out of the way. So that's done. If you watch up here as I move the cursor backwards and forwards, you'll see it going from 40 back to 50, hopefully. Whoops. See if we can do that a little bit smoother. Let's go back again. You can see that moving, and you'll also notice the split point move across the screen. So that's how I avoided that. Now the thing is, that's still a very visible line because of the mistakes I made in shooting, but we can get rid of that a little bit just by adjusting the feather control. Now we don't need much of this. I tend not to go above 13, so I'm going to bring it up to about 13. There we go, it's close enough. There we go, 13-ish. And now, when you look, let's actually adjust that up a bit. Now you can see that the split point becomes far less visible. Now if you use another method, this split point, if you try and feather it, it's not as clean. It's not as, you can still see that moving across, but you can see it's a little less distinct. We are not getting a really harsh line, but you can see it's different. So you still need to worry about your camera settings, but it did make the whole thing a little bit easier. Again, we can see there's a difference here in the picture, but nonetheless it is somewhat smoother. So that's why I prefer to use this split screen plug-in from New Blue Elements over using other methods, because it's just simpler, it's quicker, and it's a little bit more versatile. There are other things you can do. You can change the angle of the split screen, you can move it diagonally or from top to bottom or whatever you need, and you can change the positions of where it is. You can change the colour, but I leave it on whatever it sets itself up to because it's normally the best option. Okay, so that's it. Thank you for looking or watching. Thank you. Bye.